Section 1. You will hear part of a conversation between a customer and the owner of an IT store. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 8. You will see that there is an example that has been done for you. On this occasion only, the conversation relating to this will be played first.
So, before we go any further, can we just confirm what's been agreed so far, as it's starting to get a little complicated?
Certainly. Tell you what, why don't I start to make out the invoice? Should I address it to you personally, or is there a business name you'd like me to use?
We trade under the name Ben and Di Enterprises.
The invoice is being made out to Ben and Di Enterprises. So you write Enterprises in the space provided. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 8.
So, before we go any further, can we just confirm what has been agreed so far, as it's starting to get a little complicated?
Certainly. Tell you what, why don't I start to make out the invoice? Should I address it to you personally, or is there a business name you'd like me to use?
We trade under the name Ben and Di Enterprises.
Okay. Now, as you were talking to one of my sales reps to start with, I'm going to put him down as the contact on the invoice. That way, he'll get the commission on this sale, you see.
His name was Rowan Laver, is that right? Rather peculiar name, but a lovely man.
You almost got it. It's Rome, as in the city, and Laver, Laver. Your order number is 6589B521. You're paying in full, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Today's the 4th of April, so we'll put a due date of the 10th on there. Now, do you remember your order details?
Yes. First there was the filing cabinets.
Of course, for a rate of £15 each. Didn't you order print paper as well?
Yes, we're taking 20 glossy photo paper bundles. What's the unit price again?
It works out at £20 per bundle and £400 in total.
And Rome said we could do a deal on the software packages, isn't that right?
Yes. Seeing as you bought 5 at once, we'll reduce the unit price to £100 from £120, leaving us with a total amount of £500. I needn't remind you that there is an additional fixed charge totalling £40 specifically for the software installation.
Of course.
So, getting to a total figure then including sales tax, 16% VAT is added on. That gives us £1,160 by my reckoning.
By VAT, do you mean sales tax? Isn't that 10%?
It's 25% on some products and 10% on others. We work out an aggregate figure and apply it to all goods sold. In this case, it was 16%, as I've mentioned.
Fair enough.
Before listening to the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 9 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 9 to 10.
Listen, I know the due date isn't for a week, but do you mind if I write you out a cheque today?
Not at all. You can make it out to me, Michael McCloskey.
How do you spell that then?
What, McCloskey? It's capital M-C, capital C, L-O-S-K
Got it. And how much should I make it out for in total?
£1,500, please.
£1,500?
Yes, that's including my consultancy service fees.
Oh, I almost forgot about that. Let me make a note here on the cheque. Includes consultancy fees. Now we're almost done.
That's the end of section 1. You have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to section 2. Section 2.
You will hear a speech given by the head of a company to some new employees. You have 30 seconds to look at questions 11 to 16.
First of all, a warm welcome to Barker's Country Safaris. We're delighted to have you all on board for this season. I know you've all been told a bit about the company when you had your job interview, but I thought it would be worth telling you a bit more about ourselves. Barker's was set up 10 years ago by myself, John, and my then girlfriend and now wife, Nancy. We started it initially just as a hobby. We felt that there was a good opportunity to share our love of the countryside in this part of the world with the many visitors who come here. As you know, most people come for the beaches in the summer, but there is so much more to the region, and this is what we wanted to exploit. Nancy and I were born near here, and as teenagers we went climbing, kayaking, whitewater rafting, potholing, and just straightforward walking. This district is in our blood, and we love it. While we were still at university, we started taking small groups of visitors out into the national park in Nancy's brother's old Land Rover. We'd drive them around the back lanes and into the forest. We'd also organise rock climbing tours for friends of friends. Then, each year, without us having to advertise, people came back to us to ask for more excursions and trips. So, 5 years ago, we gave up our other jobs to focus full-time on Barker's Country Safaris. Now, 2 years after that, we set up the activity tour part of the business, and 1 year ago, we expanded into organising activities for school groups during term time. Obviously, this was a massive challenge with all the health and safety requirements, but it's proving a great success.
You now have 30 seconds to look at questions 17 to 20.
Anyway, we'll certainly not be dealing with school parties during the summer holidays. Our clients for the next 3 months are mostly family parties or groups of friends, and I'd like to talk a bit now about the tours we offer and what your responsibilities will be. Our most popular excursion is the Woodland Tour and Trail. Now, often this is sold out and we have all of our 10 jeeps in convoy with 8 people in each jeep. It's a lot of fun. These tours really offer a taster of what we can provide. So as both driver and guide, it is important that you do a good job here so they come back for the bigger tours. I will talk about the commission package later. As the summer days are so long, we have 3 tours each day, but you will not be expected to work on more than 2 of them. Morning tours start at 8 a.m. and go to midday. Afternoon tours are from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. and then evening ones 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. All the tours follow the same route, and you should have made yourselves familiar with all the key information. This was provided to you in the information pack you were sent when you accepted the job offer. This is important, so if you haven't had time yet, please do so now. Our second most popular tour is the Family Exclusive. Now, this tour is for the whole day and for only one group. Usually it is just one Jeep, but sometimes there are 2 if the party is large. These tours go from 10 a.m. till 5 p.m. and include lunch at the Brown Bear in Lower Middleton. We have a number of different routes for these tours, as we don't want our premium clients being made to feel that they are part of a large package deal. You will be told which route to take with your weekly schedule. Now, I'd like to move on to these specialty tour packages. These are the ones that we're keen to book people on once they've done the woodland tour and trail trip.
That is the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 3. Section 3. You will hear 2 students called Karen and Dave discussing the assignment for their biology class. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 27. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 27.
Hi, Dave. As you know, I've asked you to come here today to discuss the assignment for our biology class. We must decide what we should do about this very important research work.
The whale survey. Yeah, I was also hoping to share some ideas with you. So let's start.
OK, I've dug into some journal articles to see what sort of questions we should consider. Most of them include watching time and strongly urge it to be the top concern. What do you say?
Yeah, the watching time should be carefully chosen, since I've heard a lot of unnecessary failures concerning picking the wrong time when it all went stormy and murky, and then nothing was seen during the whole field trip. I mean, they could have avoided that easily.
Right. Then we should also pay close attention to the sea's surface because no one wants to encounter the failures you just mentioned.
I think we'd better hope for the best, that it will be calm, with no choppy status.
What about the weather conditions?
That definitely should be taken into account, as it correlates with all the former factors. Most important of all, as a sighting is made, position and environmental parameters are recorded on standardized sighting pro formats, including time, visibility, position of the ship, using a global positioning system, wind speed, and wind direction.
Shouldn't there be a set limit for the visibility level, say 50 metres?
Cetaceans are really sensitive to sound. They are able to know that something's coming after them, so they would hide in order to avoid possible danger. So let's make it 100 meters, shall we?
Yeah, that might be better. Oh, in that case, we'd also need to pay attention to the appearance of the fishing boats, for all the noise that they would make.
That's right. Although observations were regularly made, we know very little about whale vocalization and how they use sound in their behavioral and social interactions. So to understand marine mammals' social interactions, we'll need to use passive acoustic recordings to track and assess the individual behaviors of whales, as well as to identify their appearance.
OK, then what about scales?
Oh, for each sighting, the number of animals should be counted. The group size, I mean. Also, we need to identify the species, possible age, and sex of the individuals.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 28 to 30. Now, listen and answer questions 28 to 30.
Speaking of identifying species, we need to find out the unique physical features of each whale. Let's start with the sperm whale. The sperm whale is the largest toothed whale, yet it's only a quarter of that of the blue whale. Its unique body is unlikely to be confused with any other species, and that distinctive shape comes from its very large, block-shaped head, which can be 1/4 to 1/3 of its length. The sperm whale's flukes are triangular and very thick. It has a series of little bumps on the back of its fluke instead of having a dorsal fin. The largest bump is called the hump by whalers and can be mistaken for a dorsal fin because of its shape and size. Then there is the northern right whale. Right whales have round bodies with arching rostrums, V-shaped blowholes, and dark grey or black skin. The most distinguishing feature of a right whale is the rough patches of skin on its head, which appear white due to parasitism by whale lice. It has no back fins at all. The blue whale's body can be various shades of bluish-grey dorsally and somewhat lighter underneath. It has a long, tapering body that appears stretched in comparison to the stockier build of other whales. The head is flat, U-shaped, and has a prominent ridge running from the blowhole to the top of its upper lip. Lastly are the minke whales. They are the second smallest baleen whale. The minke whale is black, grey or purple in colour. Common minke whales are distinguished from other whales by a white band they have on each flipper. Their long back and tiny dorsal fin, 2/3 of the way down their back, is quite distinctive.
That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turn to section 4.
Section 4.
You will hear part of a lecture about the film director Alfred Hitchcock. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Listen carefully to the lecture and answer questions 31 to 40.
We've been talking about prominent film directors, and today I want to talk about one of the most influential directors of them all, Sir Alfred Hitchcock. I doubt there's anyone here who hasn't seen at least one of his movies. Let me give you some film titles. Put your hand up if you've seen it. OK. The Birds, Vertigo, Rear Window, The 39 Steps, Marnie, and of course, the most famous of them all, Psycho. OK, good. I can see you're all familiar with Hitchcock then. Now people assume that Hitchcock was from America, perhaps because he spent so much of his life working in Hollywood, but he was in fact born in London in 1899. He didn't actually emigrate until he was 40 years old. Most film critics would agree that Hitchcock had a huge impact on cinema. And you may be surprised to learn that he started making movies as early as the 1920s, when most films were silent. His first attempt, in 1922, actually ended in disaster. The film was ironically called Number 13, and production stopped at a late stage due to financial problems. But before he left Britain in 1939, he'd already made classics like Blackmail, the first film with sound made in Britain, The Man Who Knew Too Much, and The 39 Steps, and he was considered Britain's top director. So why was Hitchcock so influential? To start with, he pioneered techniques, especially in the genre of the psychological thriller. He was known as the master of suspense. During a career that spanned more than half a century, Hitchcock created a distinctive, perhaps unique style. One of his innovations was to use a camera the way a person watching would. This gave filmgoers the sense that they were voyeurs rather than just viewers. He exploited camera angles and used innovative editing techniques to build suspense and maximize anxiety. His eye for detail was astonishing. Did you know that the famous scene in Psycho, in which Marion is murdered in the shower, took a whole week to film? Yes, a scene little more than a minute long. There were around 60 camera positions, and the set had to constantly be deconstructed and reconstructed. Today, that kind of almost obsessive perfection simply wouldn't be cost-effective. A week filming one scene would blow the budget. So what were Hitchcock films about, and who were some of his typical characters? It would be wrong to say that Hitchcock made horror movies, suspense movies or psychological thrillers, but not horror. Hitchcock rarely showed acts of violence. The effort went into building up tension, creating a sense of unease. The viewers know that something terrible is going to happen. They don't need to actually see it. Although his stories feature psychopaths, murderers and fugitives on the run, the real strength of his work is the complex examination of his characters. His movies borrow many themes from psychoanalysis, so it's not surprising that his masterpiece is called Psycho. However, a recurring theme in Hitchcock's stories is the twist ending. That's when the story ends in the way viewers least expect it to. I mean, the good guy turns out to be the bad guy, for example. Think of Psycho. It's the element of surprise that makes the end so creepy. Now, Hitchcock's movies feature many other elements of surprise. Daring elements, in fact. Again, I'll refer to Psycho. Marion is the principal character, and it is her that the viewer relates to and empathizes with. Marion has stolen money, and the viewer wants to know if she will get away with her crime or be caught and punished. Suddenly, a third of the way into the story, Marion is murdered and the entire dynamic changes. The original storyline is put on hold and a whole new story begins. No longer able to identify with Marion, the viewer begins to empathise with the new principal character, and that, of course, is the murderer, Norman. In this way, Hitchcock manipulates the audience into seeing the story from a whole new perspective. Did you know that Hitchcock played a small part in each of his movies? He always had a cameo role, and this was a very clever move, as it helped him become known. Filmgoers could put a face to the director. Some might even say that before Hitchcock, the director was a far less significant individual in the filmmaking process. Nowadays, however, people go to see a particular director's movie regardless of who's starring in it.
That is the end of section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
That is the end of the listening test. In the IELTS test, you will now have 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the answer sheet.